Hello, everybody. Hope you had a good weekend, and here we're starting week 2 for our class, and let's get started. So you've got an assignment due for this week, and that assignment is to come up with your. Come on, let's go, little feller. Okay. So, right, let me back up. So we've got office hours on here. Anytime you want to get in touch with me, email is probably the best. I've responded to a bunch of emails from our class already, and that's just great. I put this thing on here about the Oracle public data sets because I think now you're going to start digging around for public data sets, not only for this class, but also for your capstone project. And Oracle's got a whole bunch of them out there too that might be worth looking at. Now, we're going to do this whole course using Google BigQuery's public data sets, or at least I'm going to come up with assignments based on those. But, there's other public data sets out there, and you're certainly welcome to dig into them and to think about what is out there and what might be useful for you. Now, for this course, you've got an assignment that's due this Friday that's to come up with your Azure DevOps project plan for the whole semester. And so today's class is really about what it means to do project management for this course as well as for other projects. And I think that if this isn't something that you're used to dealing with, it can be a little bit complicated to get yourself organized. But the fundamental idea for project management for this course is really to develop a plan now that can help you stay organized throughout the course. When I look at what people always ask me, what makes students successful in college and graduate school? I always tell them the thing that determines the difference between those who succeed and those who don't is that the successful ones are organized. And, I see this every time I go into class, and that organized students know what's due. They plan ahead to get things done. They have a plan for their day that says that now I'm going to do this, then I'm going to spend this amount of time working on my homework or working on projects or whatever. And then I'm going to schedule time to be with my friends and to get some exercise because, there's a really strong correlation between exercise and creativity. And so being organized matters. Well, let's look at how to get organized for this course. Well, this course really has 4 deliverables associated with it. 5 if you count the plan, but whatever. So we've got 3 team labs, the first of which is due, I think it's the first week in February, so not coming up too close yet, and then 1 team project. Well, to get organized for this class, you need to think about each one of those things as individual units that has individual time frame associated with it. You've got basically 2 weeks for each lab, and then probably 3 weeks for your team project. Okay, fine. Let's get a process in place that works for your team. As a team, get together or, virtually or whatever, and discuss, what's our schedule like? How should we get ourselves organized to do this? I made a suggestion that you assign a project manager for each one of the team labs and the team project. And if there's 3 people in the team and 3 team labs, seems kind of natural that one person would be project manager for each one of the labs. Well, that's a great idea because there's work that can be done before the team engages with one of the labs that gets the pump primed, gets the data organized, figures out where we're going to go with this, and along with input from the rest of your team, the project manager can get everything organized and get everything set up to get you started. So that was my suggestion. I think it would work pretty well. But so the next thing would be to divide each one of these labs into a series of deliverables, and then assign them to an individual in the team. Project manager gets the ball rolling. You're going to need somebody to do SQL. Maybe that's one person. Then that can be that person's contribution to the team lab. And then you've got to have somebody else who works in Data Looker Studio to organize the content that comes out of that SQL query into the layout for the the output from the lab. Now, the project manager can work across these two groups to help with things like the wireframe for the final output, for the final deliverable for the lab, and maybe assist with color choices and layouts and those kind of things. So yeah, I think that makes sense to me, but that's up to you. And then each individual who has outcomes and deliverables associated with them can divide up their deliverables into kind of sub-deliverables, and we'll look at how that's phrased in Agile. And then throughout the whole lab or whatever, you can maintain DevOps so that all the team members know what's going on and there's no surprises. If there's a dependency between the SQL and the work in Data Looker Studio, then the person who's doing the SQL needs to assign a delivery date that's early on in the 2 weeks, so that the person who's doing the Data Looker Studio can have time to do their part. So it's all about planning this out, and I think that this makes it a much more realistic project, and easier, less stress, lower the stress by having this planned out in advance. Don't expect it all to come together the night before it's due, because that's just mega stress. So treat each course deliverable. So now I'm going to translate over into the Agile vocabulary. Treat each course deliverable as an Agile epic. You've got 3 labs in one team project. Call each one of those labs an epic. An epic is, each epic can be divided into backlog work items, and we'll look at Azure DevOps in just a second here so you can see what that means. Then each work item can be written as user stories. We'll talk about that in a second. User stories are descriptions of outcomes, not there's a key distinction. Well, let's go outcomes from the perspective of an individual user. User stories can have acceptance criteria, and the acceptance criteria determine when you're done. If you satisfy the acceptance criteria, then you've satisfied that user story. And work items for the backlog can be organized into sprints, which are a series of outcomes that can be achieved kind of together. And then shared files can be maintained in the repos section of Azure DevOps for all group members to access. Now, this could be key because I'm not sure how well BigQuery works to support teams, especially with our free license. It may be the case that your SQL queries that kind of start the ball rolling need to be saved as files in the repos in Azure DevOps, and then the SQL person writes those, saves them to the repo. Then the person who's doing the Data Looker Studio logs in with their account, goes to the repo from Azure DevOps, gets the query, runs the query, and then works on the outcome. And so, I think there's a bunch of ways to do things. And let me just go through this a little bit more. So, Agile epics. Projects are divided up into epics, user stories, and acceptance criteria. Those are the 3 basic things that you work with in Azure DevOps as an agile environment. An epic is a grouping of one or more features or functionalities that we want to build, and usually takes more than one sprint to build. That may be what we do. By the way, these slides are from another course that I teach, and so I want you to get it, how to do agile projects from a generic perspective. But as you can see, I've kind of modified the examples to make it so that it makes more sense in our particular class. So an example of an epic could be implement photo sharing in direct messages. So if you're developing a new application, you may say, well, this application has a direct messaging function, and one of the things that we'd like to add to that is photo sharing. Okay, fine, that's good. And that may be the epic that you define in an application development project. But for us, an epic might be Team Lab 1. And that Team Lab 1 is made up of a bunch of user stories and acceptance criteria. Now, each epic has what are called epic spec sheets. Epic spec sheets are documents that contain all the requirements for building a product or completing a specific team lab. That might be something that the project manager writes, that is the project manager's vision for how are we going to get this lab done. What does done look like? It's always good, kind of whatever you do, to define what success looks like. When we get freshmen coming into our classes, a lot of times they decide before they get there, because they did so well in high school, they should get 4.0s their entire college career. Well, that's defining success in a way that there's no flexibility whatsoever. You have one bad class and you've failed. Other people come in and say, well, I'm going to define success. I'm going to try and stay above a 3.5 GPA in my college career. Well, you know what? That just gives them so much more freedom to take different courses, to give themselves a break every once in a while, to maybe not be perfect. And if they're not perfect, it doesn't destroy their whole college career. Well, the way that you define success in these projects needs to give yourself a little bit of leeway, so that you don't define success as being perfection, but as we're going to work from a series of kind of questions, and you're going to you might define success as being coming up with an answer that's pretty thorough and kind of gets at the main point, but isn't perfect, because then you can do your work and still live a life. So epic spec sheets, that might be something that your project manager writes. You might have an outline that looks something like this, or you have an introduction, which is a summary of what features you're building are for and why you're building them. What metrics are you trying to improve? Documentation links, marketing plans, legal requirements, early wireframes, all that background stuff that can help organize your team and let the project manager share their vision for what the success looks like. Now, our first project is e-commerce or ERP. Well, there's tons of different dashboards out there designed for e-commerce people. Maybe the project manager looks ahead now, this time, while we're working on this previous assignment, and finds some links to ones that they particularly like and say, maybe we should head toward an e-commerce dashboard that looks something like this. What I really like about this dashboard are the colors that are used. I like the way that we've got the main metrics in the right location at the top left-hand corner of the page, or those kind of things. That's what, when we go into this epic spec sheet outline, which may exist as just a file in your repos, by the way, or it may exist as a as part of the project summary. You could have a project summary that talks about where you add on for each one of the labs. You do that. There's lots of ways to do this, but what I think would be a valuable approach is for whoever's going to be the project manager for this first lab, second lab, whatever, write down your vision. Give the rest of your team links and examples of what you think works good. Product requirements. What are required for the specific features you want to build? What are the metrics that may be required to satisfy the requirements for this whole assignment? Design requirements, sketches, prototypes, wireframes. You could use, what's that tool? Figma. You could use Figma if you wanted to put together some wireframes. And engineering requirements, what must be done on the technical side. What are the fields that need to come out of the data set as part of the SQL? All of those things might be part of the project manager's vision for getting this project done. Now, user stories are interesting. You could get caught up in the lingo, the agile lingo, but user stories have one thing that I think really sells them. And that's the part that, let's see, okay, let's see. This part right here, project managers, come on, okay. Project managers are responsible for the what and the why, and the engineers and designers are responsible for the how. A user story doesn't tell the engineers, your other team members, how to do what you want them to do. It just tells them what you want them to do. So user stories are a way to describe a thing we're going to build that delivers some type of functionality to the end user. So I got a couple of examples here. The first one from a generic application development perspective. As a user, I want to send pictures in a direct message to my friends so that I can share my favorite photos from them. Well, here's an example. From our perspective, as an e-commerce marketing person, maybe that's who this project is designed for, I want to know which product lines are rising in popularity so that I can alert our manufacturers to produce more inventory and avoid a stock outage. Stock outage is the worst thing that can happen to a retailer, where you go ahead and spend lots of money to go find a customer, have that customer come to your location, come to your website, look for what they want to find. You've normally got it in stock, but when they click to buy it, you don't have any inventory. That's the worst thing that can happen. So a common thing that e-commerce marketing people want from an application is exactly this. Which product lines are rising in popularity, where we don't say, well, we always have 500 in inventory. Maybe this one's rising in popularity, and instead we should have 600 or 800 in inventory at any given time so that we can avoid the dreaded stock outage. So the standard format for a user story is as a X, as a role, whatever that role is, I want to do something so that I can realize some goal of some sort or another. And like I said, project managers are responsible for the what and the why. So you'll notice that a user story is about the what and the why, but it's not about the how. And I'm not telling this user story about an e-commerce marketing person doesn't tell the SQL people or anybody else how to determine what products are rising in popularity. It just says, go find out what products are rising in popularity and then alert me to that. User stories are written on tickets in the project management tool. We'll see that in a second. And then acceptance criteria are associated with these user stories so that the software must satisfy to be considered complete. What does the e-commerce person, marketing person, need to have in this dashboard so that they can so that we can say that the user story is complete? That's what the acceptance criteria are really all about. All right, so I'll post these slides on here, as a matter of fact, and they've got some pretty good videos in there. So if you want to learn more about user stories and things, so here's a video with how to write good user stories in agile software development. Here's another example, writing good user stories. Let's see, that same video, and then acceptance criteria. What do those acceptance criteria look like? And this is from Atlassian, which is kind of the alternative to Azure DevOps, and so a lot of companies use one or the other for their project management. And then here we've got, let's see, also about acceptance criteria. So as a potential conference attendee, I want to be able to register for the conference online so that registration is simple and paperless. Okay, that's the user story. The acceptance criteria might be a conference attendance form. User cannot submit a form without filling out the conference attendance form. Information from the form is stored in the registration database. Protection against spam is working, so that we don't want some spammer hammering us with all kinds of user attendance forms, but they're not really coming. Payment can be made via PayPal, debit, or credit cards. An acknowledgement email is sent to the attendee after submitting the forms. So if what the developers develop lives up to these acceptance criteria, then this user story is considered done. Okay? That's what this is all about. So what does a component need to do so that you can declare the user story satisfied? That's what the acceptance criteria. Given I'm a user and I click the Add Picture button in the direct message, I'm presented with a pop-up window to choose a file I can upload, submit it with the Upload button, and see a preview of the uploaded image. Those are the acceptance criteria. Given I'm a user who has successfully loaded a photo from my computer, when I click Send, the image is sent to my friend through the direct message and it appears in the chat. Those are the acceptance criteria for that one about sending photos through direct message. So, why do you do this? Well, because it allows more communication within the group. And I always tell you that computing is really about people. That's what this is about. This is the people side. Now, story points are usually associated with user stories. So, and by doing this, what we're doing is we're just saying that these user stories are hard, but these are easier. That's all. So that if you have one of your developers who's got 50 story points, but the other developer only has 10, well, give the first developer a little break. But it's really just about measuring the difficulty. Now, you can do that or not in Azure DevOps. I think that's really kind of up to you. Or what you could do is do it after you've completed a lab so that you can look back and say, we're doing another lab in 2 weeks. How can we make our process better? Maybe the SQL side of things is really easy, but the layouts in Data Studio are hard. In which case, maybe we don't divide things up between one person doing all the SQL and somebody else doing the layouts. Maybe we find a different way to divide up the work. Just to give you a little something to go on here, e-commerce analytics data in Azure DevOps. It's out there. I found at least 2 really good sets of data out there that you may find interesting. Now, this one we're going to look at more in class, and I just wanted to, point it out to you. And you'll notice that this is the GA4, that's Google Analytics 4, obfuscated sample data. And this is data from the Google Merch store that they make available, obfuscated, which means you can't tell who the actual purchaser is, but all the other data is pretty much real. And so you can look at this. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice is that in the GA4 obfuscated sample data, there's only one table, and that table is called events. And the events table, I don't have it here, but it's really big. It's really wide for one thing, and you're going to have lots of redundant data in here. Lots of blank fields, lots of data that needn't be in there, that it's not normalized. Well, what this is a neat example of an analytics, data warehouse, data lake, whatever you want to call it, probably data warehouse. In that what they've done is they've taken the transactional data that is generated by the Google Merch store and then just run a query that says, give me this really wide table that my analytics people can use to answer all these questions. But we could never use to actually run the store, because we've got to have a different data structure to actually run the store. But so this is a neat example of an analytics table that's drawn from the transactional data and is now ready for you to use for the kind of work that we're going to do for the first lab. That's great. Well, the other one that they have is this thelook_e-commerce, which is much more of a transactional database where we've got a whole bunch of different tables that are set up. I should have been on the details link, but anyhow, that are set up in a normalized fashion so that you could use this to run the transactions that actually generate the money for your e-commerce database. And so here's a good example of the actual data that's used behind the database, behind the e-commerce site. The analytics version for the Google e-commerce store, that's already set up. There was a SQL query that was run against the transactional side of the Google Merch store that generated that GA4 obfuscated sample data set. So here's the 2 different versions. Now, if you wanted to make your life more realistic for that first e-commerce assignment, what you could do would be to start with the look e-commerce site and write a query that grabs data from all of these different normalized tables and generate first that analytics data set. And then later on, write another SQL query that then creates the output that you will use as part of your team lab. So neat stuff. At least 2 different sets of e-commerce data in the Google BigQuery environment. I was looking for ERP data and I didn't see much in there, but dig around and let me know if you find anything. And let's see, now the other thing that I wanted to show you was your Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps, we're going to be working in this, and this is just example stuff here, and you can see that this is in my account. You can this one is located as private. You can invite people to be members of your group. So this is where someone would start the class Azure DevOps project, and then they would send out invitations to the other team members to join in the Azure DevOps project. And you've got options to give people rights and access privileges and all that kind of stuff. You'll figure all that out. I don't need to go over that. But we start out with a project summary, and in this project summary, this one looks like it's gone, but you'll figure it out. This project summary could, here's my members. It's just me. This is old. Sorry about that. This project summary could start out with a summary of how you're going to approach the entire semester, and then you could add on to it and say, this is how we're going to approach Lab 1. This is how we're going to approach Lab 2. This is how we're going to approach Lab 3. With that, the project manager's vision for the lab kind of stuff that I talked about before. Now, once you've got your summary in place, you can go to this, click on this boards, and in the boards, you're going to see things like work items. So work items in here, and you can add new work items. And these new work items could be an epic, which would be Lab 1. It could be a user story. And we'll click on user story here. And here we've got a place where we can give a title to the user story. We can give a description to the user story. We can add user points for this thing. And then we can add acceptance criteria for this user story also. And I think there's even a discussion section here. You can add discussion in here if you would like. And add links and all kinds of stuff in here. This is the real deal. This is kind of what you need. Now, once you've typed up your user story, that user story can be made part. Part of, I'm gonna say discard the changes. Part of your backlog, and the backlog, that's the list of things to be done. Okay, and that list of things to be done can be organized into sprints. And let's see, we'll look at the task board. The backlog. I thought I had some in here. All right, and so that's the sprints can have a to-do list, in process list, and a done list. And you just drag and drop your user stories from to-do to in process to done, and that all gets shared with all the other members of the group, and that's the beauty. Now, the other thing that we've got are these repos, and this it gets right into GitHub and Git and generating Git credentials and blah blah blah. But this is the place where you all could share files that are part of the overall lab that needs to be done, and you can learn how to work with commits and pushes and branches and tags, and working in these repos is a talent in and of itself, and a really useful thing for you to know to work as a team in any sort of a computing environment. So that's all I've got for this week. I hope that it gets you started. Keep an eye on the reading list in my courses. I've added a bunch of stuff in there, and I think it's all really relevant to the course, and I think you'll find it interesting if you keep track of that. So take care, everybody, and I will talk to you soon. Remember, you've got the project plan for the semester is due on Friday. So take care, everybody. Bye-bye.